Hi, my name is Greg Campbell, Chief Architect at Acaveo. Today I want to show you how to perform a basic installation of the Acaveo DataClassifier for SharePoint Fast product. The basic steps I'll be walking you through are as follows. First, we'll configure and verify the prerequisites. Next, we'll install DataClassifier for Fast, and then we'll perform the initial configuration that'll get our environment ready for policy creation. Let's begin. The first prerequisite is a SQL Server 2008 R2 or later instance on which you'll house the DataClassifier application database. This database will be extremely small and place virtually no load on the SQL Server, so it's entirely appropriate to use any existing SQL Server. In my environment, what I'm actually doing is just reusing the SharePoint SQL Server. The next prerequisite is to set up the domain account under which the DataClassifier service will run. And there's a few requirements and privileges which you need to grant this service account. So the first requirements are that this service account must be a member of the Fast Search Administrators and Administrators group on all of your Fast servers. In my environment, I only have a single Fast server, so we can switch to that now and take a look at that configuration. So GregDevF, which is the Fast server in this environment. And if I look at the local machine administrators group, I can see there's the SVC under DataClassifier, which is my DataClassifier service account. And likewise, if I look at the Fast Search Administrators group, I'll see the same thing. So the next requirement for the DataClassifier service account is that it needs to have read-write permissions to the app data directory for whatever the Fast service account is. And again, this would apply across all of your Fast servers. So in my environment, if I connect back to GregDevF, the first thing that we need to do is figure out what service account Fast is running under on this particular machine. So if I go to the services and I locate the Fast search for SharePoint, I can see that it's the SP_service account that's being used to run Fast. So all I need to do is locate the app data directory for that particular account, which I'll find under C drive users app data. And then I can simply right click on that and say properties and look at the security. And I've already previously come in here and I've added the DataClassifier service account to have that permission. Just remember that app data is a hidden directory, so you will need to enable Windows Explorer to be able to view hidden directories. The next prerequisite for the DataClassifier service account is that it will need to have the DB creator role on whatever the SQL Server is that you've chosen to host the DataClassifier application database on. And then finally, the DataClassifier service account needs to have read permission to all of the indexed content. So for example, in this environment, I'm indexing some file shares as well as SharePoint web application. And so I need to go ahead, and I've already gone and granted the SVC DataClassifier service to have read permissions to those file shares and also to the entire SharePoint web application. So the way that I did that for SharePoint, if I switch to my SharePoint server, which is GregDevE, I'm in the central administration, manage web applications, and if I take a look at the user policies for my web application, you can see that I've added the SVC DataClassifier service account to have full read. So this list of prerequisites is sort of the simplified list. And so it's possible, if you want to do a least privileged install, that some of these things can be modified. So we don't technically need to be a member of the local machine administrators group. We don't need to have the DB creator role. And it is possible, although you'll get reduced functionality, to not have read permission to all of the index content. So for more details on that kind of a least privileged installation, just refer to our manual. Now that we've met all the prerequisites, we're ready to go ahead and install the DataClassifier software. You need to make sure to install the DataClassifier software on each of your Fast servers that have crawl components. In my environment, that's fairly simple since I only have the one Fast server, GregDevF. I just need to install the software there. So if I connect over to GregDevF, I've previously downloaded the installer into the temp directory. Here it is here. So I'll open up that zip package. Inside of the zip package, there's the installation and configuration as well as the user guides and also the installer. So I'll go ahead and I'll run the installer. And I'll hit next to the welcome screen and I'll accept the terms of the license. And the first piece of information that I get prompted for is the DataClassifier database connection string, which I can build using our builder. So you enter in the SQL Server that you want to house the application database on. In this case, it's GregDevD. And I'll say create a new database, and I'll accept the default database name, DataClassifier. And then I can go ahead and validate that that was successful. I can see that the database has been created and we can connect to it. The next piece of information is the service account for DataClassifier. So we've already talked about that. That's SVC DataClassifier. And I'll go ahead and validate that. Good. So I'll hit next and I'll accept the default installation directory and I can go ahead and install. I'll say yes. Perfect. So the software should now be installed, and if you go over to your services, and I'll just hit refresh here, you can see that there's now an Acaveo DataClassifier service which has been started in this environment. So at this point, we're fairly happy that our installation is successful. So now we can go ahead and connect to the DataClassifier UI. So I'll go ahead and go to the Acaveo DataClassifier Programs group. I'll launch the Acaveo DataClassifier UI. And I simply tell it to connect to the local instance of DataClassifier that we just installed. And there's just one piece of configuration that we need to provide. So if I go to the configuration node, I need to provide DataClassifier with the URL to a search service in my environment. In most cases, this is easily built just by entering in the name of one of your SharePoint servers. So in my environment, entering in Greg Dev E will result in a URL that is a valid query service. So I can go ahead and validate that. And that's okay. If this isn't the case in your environment, that you have a web application running on port 80 under the root of one of your SharePoint servers, you can go ahead and manually specify a valid URL if needed. So I'll just go ahead and accept that change. And at this point, I've completed the installation and configuration of DataClassifier, and I'm ready to begin creating and using policies. So we'll cover that material in a future video. Thanks for watching.